Obviously, I'm mental, but listen to what I'm saying. I'm running 100 marathons in 100 days. I've been telling myself for 18 months, every single day, that that's what I was going to do. And I was also surrounding myself with other crazy people, because that's how you do it, isn't it? It's like you surround yourselves with the people that are going to bring you up.
We're going to hear lots about things like Project Salt Run and Better Business Network and living on canal barges and all that sort of stuff. So that's your teaser. But Hannah, for our benefit, it's easy to jump in at the story late. What came before all that? Like, give us your journey into life pre-Better Business Network.
Oh yeah, so my journey started, really bizarrely, I wanted to be a scuba diving instructor. I don't know if you know this about me.
I don't know that about you.
So I grew up in nowhere near the sea, actually, in a town called Royston in Hertfordshire. And a scuba diving shop opened up and I got a job there, and I 16, 17 years old, I learned how to scuba dive right up to rescue diver. And I wanted to go work in Australia, which I've still never been, spoiler, and teach on the Great Barrier Reef. And that was kind of my dream. Travel was really important to me. I grew up quite poor, so we didn't really go overseas. So it was all about getting your own job and being able to escape basically this small town. And
why did they open a scuba diving?
I don't know why. I feel like it feels like it should have been like a drugs front or something, but like I never did that. I sold scuba diving courses. I was on the record, right? But it was bizarre. And we used to like go to like there was a quarry near Peterborough that we take people diving at the weekends, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. And then my stepdad passed away, and my mum just said, "Oh, he always wanted you to go to uni." And I was like 19. No real interest in going to university. Ended up going to uni. All my friends did creative music technology. I learnt there were albums out there that weren't called Pure Garage 1, 2 and 3. And I wasn't a musician, but I kind of loved that scene. So I got really into like putting on gigs, organising gigs, club nights, worked in the music industry for a very long time. And in my 20s, I spent all my free time travelling and visiting other places. And so that was kind of what I was doing before. And then when my dad passed away in 2011, he'd had a career which was very strict. He'd worked for Glaxo for 40 years. And unfortunately, when he was planning to retire at 60. When he turned 59, they decided to restructure his department. So he had to re-interview for his job. And he luckily got the doctor to sign him off with a bad back. So he managed to hit 60 and get his full retirement. Which was in kind of the October, and then he was diagnosed with cancer in the May and then died in the July. So he didn't actually get to do all this kind of stuff that he'd planned with his retirement. And I thought he was not proud of me because I was just, buzzing about music festivals, travelling. And he said to me, actually, I'm really proud that you're just doing stuff that you love. You better not stop doing stuff you love. That's kind of how I started to get into like, how can I start doing something that feels got a bit of purpose and makes me happy?
Wow. So what brought you to Manchester?
Me and some friends have got this like disused rail arch in London Bridge and decided to put on 99 days of counterculture, we called it. And it was like art, cinema stuff, club nights, gigs. And a promoter from Manchester came down and did a night. And I met, some people in here might know him, a guy called Johnny Shire in the smoking area, and a guy called Andy Smith, and they invited me to come up to Manchester. Used to come up here once a month. My sister is at uni here. She used to work in Apothecary, if anyone remembers that, Northern Quarter Bar. 2 for £5 espresso martinis. Yeah, great. And I used to come up a lot, and then just one day I got a phone call from my friend Nick, and he said, "Do you want to put on a music festival in Manchester?" And I thought, yeah, I would actually quite like to do that. So I moved up here in 2011 in the February just before my dad passed away, and I put on a 5,000 capacity festival in Congleton, with having never done anything like that before in my life. I had no idea what I was doing at all, actually. I happened to meet Andy Smith. We went to a gig together, and I didn't realise he ran this festival called Kendal Calling, which I'd never heard of because I was from the south. And he was like, "Here's my flyer guy, here's my poster guy, here's the DJs I booked from town, here's the people you need to get in with," and just properly like supported me in like putting on a music festival. And then I just fell in love with the city and then didn't leave.
That's amazing. What is it that's giving? Because it's a bit of a theme, I think, that emerges in your story. But what is it about you that allows you to believe anything's possible? Like, 'cause not everybody goes, let's do 5,000. You know, maybe you start with a theatre, or you start with like a something like this, or and then you go, I know, and where else to do it other than Congleton,
Yeah.
which is the retirement home of Cheshire, isn't it? I think.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about. I've never been to Congleton, so I didn't know. I guess I've always just thought, just grab the opportunity and don't ever be afraid of asking for help. I think something that was always instilled in me as a kid is like, you know, the worst thing someone can do is say they can't help you. So, and you'll be in the same position you're in now without the help. So I've never been afraid to ask for help, but I've also never been afraid to work hard. I had 3 jobs from the age of 15. So I knew that like nothing comes to you for free, but you can make your own luck. And I think, you know, I was, you know, you can focus on the like negatives in your life, or like the places the things you weren't given, or you can focus on trying to give yourself the best opportunities that you can. So, or just I'm mental, which is probably more likely, and I get asked that a lot, especially when I tell people what I've recently been doing. But I guess I'm just like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Is I don't do the thing that I'm trying to achieve, and then at least I can say I exhausted all possibilities of trying to make that thing happen. And that probably does stem from my dad waiting to do that and just never doing it at all. So I don't want to waste that opportunity of trying to make things happen for myself.
So between 2011 and the Better Business Network,
Yeah.
What's that journey?
So I moved to Manchester, put on the music festival. My dad actually died just before the festival happened. I remember getting the phone call. I was at Inner Space, just around the corner, and I was like, "What? Put on this music festival next week." Went to Apotheca with Andy, got very drunk, and went to my dad's funeral, and then the next day was on site at this festival putting it on. Obviously, that was not, you know, the best way to grieve somebody passing away, but I was going through a really tough time. And then I went traveling for a bit after that, and randomly met, this is actually a really weird story, but basically I had been on tour with Reverend and the Makers a few years before.
Okay.
And I ended up, after my dad passed away, I took this one-way, I got a one-way flight to Asia to take a bit of, like, to figure out what I wanted to do. And John and his wife Laura, who's also in the band, were in Phu Quoc, which is like a southern island in Vietnam, and I was in Thailand. And it was that time on Facebook where you'd say, "Oh, I'm in Thailand," and someone would go, "Oh, I'm in Vietnam," and you'd be like, "Oh, I'll see you tomorrow," you know, just jump on a flight sort of thing. It was really weird. And then I ended up like meeting them on this beach, and John was like, "Oh, I found out what happened about my dad," and he was like, "I found you somewhere to go in the Lonely Planet." And he'd found this like Zen Buddhist monastery in Dalat, and he was like, "You need to like sort your life out, Hannah, what are you doing?" And so I kind of got sent there by John McClure, and I turned up in Dalat, and it was like Karate Kid. You had to like go get a like scooter up to the monastery, and they'd be like, "You can't come in today. Why do you want to come in?" You'd be like, and I did it about 4 days in a row, and I was like, "Are they actually ever going to let me in this bloody monastery?" Anyway, they did, and I was there for 3 months.
Very, very Buddhist approach.
Very Buddhist. Yeah. So we spent 3 months there, and it was amazing, really life-changing experience. I was brought up very strict Catholics. I've always been quite spiritual, and I kind of lost my faith a bit, and I feel like that brought back a lot of faith and understanding about life and the universe. And I was like, I think I want to do more with myself. So I came back to Manchester and
just before you go on, give us a picture of what that 3 months was like.
Oh, so like,
because there's probably
I'd like to pretend that I was like that the whole time, but funny story. So you're there, no one spoke English. There was one nun that spoke English. So you're in your robes, you wake up in the morning, meditate for 2 hours, do some kind of cleaning. I was in charge of sweeping the brush around the rooms, and then you do some more meditation, and then lunch, and then more meditation. And it's just lots of meditation, basically.
What kind of meditation?
But it's not like in some meditations you're kind of guided through like a visualization, but in Zen meditation you just sit there basically, And I thought I was going to have this like, you know, moment. But the worst thing about it was you had no access to any media on your phone, or I mean, to be honest, phones were pretty crap back then anyway, but you know, you didn't have books or anything. I just remember specifically, like for 3 days in a row, I had the song Barbie Girl in my head by Aqua. And I cannot hear that song now without being like, oh God, because I just couldn't get rid of it. It was like an earworm, but like, I didn't know how it got in there. And there was like no music, other music I could listen to. And I was just like, supposed to be having this spiritual experience. Like, what is the universe trying to tell me here? Still don't know the answer to that. So if anyone can figure out why that was the song in my head.
I think the Dalai Lama's a big Aqua fan.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But it did, you know, like, you know, I had a great experience there, and it was during Vietnamese New Year as well. So we also spent a lot of time making these like kind of Vietnamese sweet snacks that were given out to people. And actually the Zen Buddhist master came and talked. I didn't know what he was saying, but that was cool. And anyway, came back and I was like, kind of, that had really changed how I was. And I still came back and worked in music, and events. And I've done quite a few things with the Kendall team and still do. But I started putting on these little like meet-up evenings in Pioneer in the Northern Quarter. My friend Gaz had moved to from Apotheca, and I'd put on like movies or documentaries that people could meet and talk about, because I found it difficult to meet new people. You know, I'd moved to the city in my mid-20s. It's a hard time to make new friends. And I thought if you give people like something to talk about, then, you know, it can spark the conversation. So I started doing these kind of meetups, and I basically did an adventure planning one. And I'd read the World Happiness Report that had recently come out, and it was saying how it basically has data on what makes people happy. And Copenhagen was measured as the happiest place to live in the world at that time. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go on a trip to Copenhagen. And I'd also read the Great Hedge of India book, which we'll get into, and I wanted to take this big trip to India. Basically, I said it was an adventure planning workshop. I just basically turned up with a big map of the world and some of my lonely planets, and then we all just kind of had a chat. And I said, oh, you know, I really want to go to Copenhagen. And the guy just went, oh, have you heard of Bhutan? It's a place that measures everything by gross national happiness. So the government and the country make decisions based on whether its citizens will be happy or not. And I'd never heard of Bhutan. I didn't actually even know where it was, but it was above India. And I was like, oh, I'd love to go there. And I love overland travel. And I want to do this India trip. So I just thought, well, obviously the answer to that is I will travel overland between Copenhagen and Bhutan to discover what makes people happy. And I was a member of the Royal Geographical Society, so I kind of pitched it to them as an expedition, and it went in as an expedition. And I was like, right, I'm gonna do this overland trip, and then when I get to India, I'm gonna go and try and find this hedge, which I've been obsessed with since my dad passed away. He was, to go back a few steps, he was from Kolkata. He moved here when he was 3 years old. So I've been reading a lot about Indian history over the following years, and I'd found this book called The Great Hedge of India, which leads me into kind of Project Salt Run. But that was the original. That's kind of where I was at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And so we'll come on to that in a second. But what I want to dig a little bit into what changed for you in that 3 months. Like, if you could articulate what do you come back? You said you'd sort of reawaken that sort of more spiritual side of you. But what did that mean, or how did it feel?
I think I feel like it was. I've not really talked about this much when talking about Project Salt Run, but I think the more I talk about it, you remember the points where you kind of started to go down a different path. And I think for me it was, you know, understanding what is the point of any of us being here? Like, what is the point? Which is, you know, an answer that, you know, I'm sorry not going to give you the answer to that in this Freelancers and Friends breakfast. But
when you're just a Barbie girl in a Barbie world.
Just exactly.
Life's
Don't take
plastic.
any advice from me.
Yeah.
But, you know, ultimately it's like creating, you know, if you know anything about Buddhist teachings, a lot of it's about good karma, creating good energy, being responsible for your own actions, you know, which is a lot of, you know, most religions. You know, ultimately what I found interesting about being in that Zen Buddhist monastery is Zen Buddhists believe in all religions are correct and exist for different reasons. And I do believe that. I don't think there's anything, I think it doesn't really matter what your religion is, or how what religion you were growing up in. Ultimately, all religions are teaching you to look after your fellow human beings and acknowledge that the world is bigger than just you, and that we exist on this planet to should care about other people. And I think that reminded me about how I was spending my time, and was I spending it in a way that I felt was creating a better planet, world, making people feel good. And I didn't feel at the time, while I loved working in music, that my job had any really positive purpose in that space. So I think I wanted to come back and do something that I felt was making people's lives better, and that I was using the privilege that I had by being born in the UK to do good stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so then that leads to, is that what leads to Better Business Network?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I kind of came back, wanted Better Not Stop was a sort of just a thing I was doing, you know, just kind of on the side, free events. And then
So tell us about that, and then tell us how.
yeah, so I came back. Better Not Stop was like, right, I'm going to start putting on these free events for people to come to that are in alcohol spaces, because there really isn't anywhere else in the evening square in Manchester, but like weren't alcohol based, so they were more like more welcoming for people to come to, that like had a documentary or talk or someone people could come to and connect with other people, and just talk about, you know, minimalism, adventure, spirituality, how our brains work. And
Why did you call it Better Not Stop?
because that's what my dad had said to me in the hospice. He said, you better not stop doing stuff that matters, that you care about. So that's how that name came up. And then, you know, this obsession with the hedge in India started, and someone at this adventure networking workshop said you should travel between those two countries by train. I thought that's a good idea. And that was in 2016 time. And I saved up for 2 years. At the time, I was working in music and events at a creative agency in Manchester as a project manager. And I also had a little shop in Afflex with a friend selling art by tattoo artists. So we had a few different things going on. And I saved up for about a year and a half. I worked every day for about a year and a half. Saved up enough money to take this trip. Got on the like ferry at Norwich to Amsterdam. Spent 10 months traveling down to India and Bhutan by train, which was incredible. It was like, if anyone loves traveling by train, there's a great website called Man and Seat 61, and I just went on there and he told me how to do it. And part of that was interviewing and meeting people on the way, asking them what makes them happy, what they care about. And ultimately the answer was the same in every single country we went to, which is having a job or a hobby with purpose that they felt was making the world, fulfilling them and making the world a better place. And also being surrounded by a good community. And that could have been friends or family. It didn't actually seem to make much difference whether people had a close group of mates or a close family unit. It was more, depending on the country, you know, it'd be more family based in some countries and more friend based in others. But ultimately it was having people around you knew cared about you and that you cared about, and having work that you cared about. So then I wanted to come back to the UK and do more stuff like that. And then I started Better Not Stop as a business, and then wanted to meet other businesses that cared about that. So that's how I started the network.
And so just tell us what the network is and what it stands for. And
yeah, so it's a membership organisation for purpose-driven businesses. So it doesn't matter what industry or sector you're in, as long as you care about making the world a nicer place, you're kind of in the gang. You can be a freelancer, you can be a large business, you can be a charity, NGO. It's all about bringing people together with kind of 3 core principles, which is community. So how do you have that support system around you to make you feel confident and happy to make those changes in yourself and your business? And that is how we achieve that, is through, we have an app, regional monthly networking events, a summit, a weekly newsletter where people can catch up, just ways in which we're always trying to connect our members to each other. Continuous education, or continuous growth we call it, which is like, how can we provide training and development and support to people so that they can do good stuff, and also training and development and like business development support to businesses. So ways in which we do that is we offer like free carbon literacy training to people, because when we talk about, let's just say the climate crisis as an example, I don't think people don't want to have a conversation about it, but they just don't know enough about it because it's not their wheelhouse. So we do carbon literacy training so people have an idea of what that is, what scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions are, because that's not something we get taught in school. And then the last one is collective action. How do we all come together to do good stuff? Collective action for us as a network is about trying to signpost and encourage people to like all work together for a bigger goal beyond them and their business. Project Salt One was one of those, but we also do things like support the real living wage, charitable giving, things like that.
And people can get involved in that.
Yeah, it's free to join the Better Business Network. So there's different tiers depending on the level of support you want as a business or as an individual, but it's just free to join. So we restructured that about a month ago actually, because overall as an organisation we want to hit 10,000 members so that we can start to push for legislation within government to make so it's easier for people to run better businesses in the UK. So I always think, where is the money going? Where is the voice? If there's 10,000 you view, it's a much bigger voice. Government has to listen. If you've got 10,000 signatures, government has to respond to a petition. If you get 100,000 signatures, government has to talk about it in the House of Commons. So that's the voice part. And then where's the money going? We want to use that voice to try and make it possible so that if you are a business that wants to pay real living wage, wants to offer your employee better benefits, wants to do charitable giving, that the government makes it easier for you to do that, because they put legislation in place so that your corporation tax will be less or your national insurance will be less and things like that. Because I think it's all about where the money's going. We live in a capitalist system and that's not going to change. So, yeah. And people want to do good stuff.
Let's talk about hedge.
Yes.
So tell it, you've teased this hedge. What is the hedge?
So it's called the Great Hedge of India. I know some people have already heard this story, so I apologise. In the 19th century, there was a 4,000 kilometre long hedge that ran through India, which sounds mental because it is. It was about, massive 18, 20 foot high, 16 foot deep, had about 10 to 12,000 British Army officers that manned this hedge from basically Lahore in the Himalayas, which is now Pakistan, right down to Orissa, which is just close to the state near Kolkata. And they used it to enforce a salt tax. So it was the East India Company, which is the company that we base our company law on now in the UK, which is companies exist to just make a shitload of money for the shareholders. So the East India Company went to India. They created this company law that was businesses exist to make money for the shareholders. An example of how the East India Company did that is the first ship to ever leave the UK for the East India Company left, just stole the goods all off another ship and then came back and was like, yeah, well, we did what we were supposed to do. We made you money. So they just didn't care. They did not care at all. So the East India Company went to India, thought we need to enforce a land and a salt tax. What's the best way to do this? Let's build a massive hedge. They built this massive hedge through the country. People couldn't pass the hedge without paying a customs tax. And as a result of this hedge, there's nearly like £10 million was extracted from the country. Led to the death of between 6 to 8 million Indian people, because we all need salt to live. But then after 30 years, the famines got so bad in India, the East India Company were like, maybe we need to start collecting this salt tax in a different way. And the hedge was kind of dissolved and they started to collect salt tax right from the source, which continued to lead to the death of millions of Indians, but in a less obvious way. And then no one knows about this hedge. It was there for about 30 years. A guy called Roy Moxham went to a second-hand bookshop in 1990 and picked up a book by a British Army officer, like a journal, that was talking about this hedge. And he was like, what is this hedge? He then spent 5 years researching it, found out about the Great Hedge of India, wrote his book on it. And then I had read that book back in 2015. And I just thought it was a crazy story. And I thought it'd be a great way for me to reconnect with the country that my dad was from by basically going to India and seeing if any of this hedge or any existence of this 150-year-old hedge still existed.
And you can even find it on maps or Google or like there's no evidence of it really.
No, so hedges are man-made. So the minute you stop looking after it, it just disappears. Roy had found 2 maps. There's one in the there's one in the Royal Geographical Society, specifically of the Agra region. And if you look on that map, you can see it's like little bushes, and it's called the Inland Customs Line. But you can see they've drawn it as bushes, so you know that it was a hedge. And then there's one map in the British Library from 1874, which is a map of the entire state of India, the entire country of India, where you can see the entire line going through. So the obvious thing for me was to go to the British Library, which you're not allowed to take copies of that, but to secretly take pictures on my phone and then map it out on Google Earth and then visit it.
So you went and did that, literally went and did that, mapped it out.
Yeah.
With, and was the vision immediately to go visit it, or was it?
The original vision was to get a tuk-tuk, which I still couldn't drive at the time. I didn't have a driving license, but the vision was go to India, get a tuk-tuk, and go kind of to the closest I could to the Pakistan border, and then kind of go down and just kind of have a bit of a jolly. Really, it wasn't like a proper research geographical trip. It was like, here are the towns that I know it kind of went through. And the first time I mapped it out, it was very basic mapping. I just kind of got the names of the big cities and kind of done a very basic map. And I was like, I'll just get this tuk-tuk and it'll be like a holiday, basically, an adventure. But the first time I went to India in 2018, I was with a partner at the time I'd taken on that trip, and he hated India, so we came back to the UK. And yeah, it was more just like to experience the country. That was kind of version one of it wasn't even Project Salt Run then. But it wasn't until I kind of came back, started working in better business, purpose-driven business, and then the idea kind of came round again, and is what it was, yeah.
All right, well, so tell us about, I mean, there's a few strands there, isn't there? It's obviously, there must have been an aspect of that was feeling closer to your dad and discovering more about his heritage and things like that. You had this injustice you discovered or uncovered in a way that you wanted to raise awareness of and kind of do something with that. So tell us how Project Salt Run became an idea.
Yeah, so the first time, like I said, it was more just like discovering more about India, trying to tell the story a bit more about colonial injustice, basically. I very much understand my privilege as a white person growing up in the UK, and people don't know that people always surprise my dad's from India, and I've been lucky enough to earn enough money to take myself on a lot of places around the world, and the more I travel, the more I just realise, God, I'm so lucky to have been born in the UK with the opportunities that I had. So that India trip originally for me was, yes, it was going to be a jolly, going on a tuk-tuk, having a bit of a laugh, but it was also, I wanted to tell that story of the hedge and what it had done, and how we need to be talking about it in the UK, because we don't talk about the East India Company in schools and what it did to India and lots of other countries, and we should, because it wasn't actually that long ago. 150 years is not that long ago when that existed. Anyway, I came back, started Better Not Stop, which is a sustainable impact agency now, and then out of that became the Better Business Network. And about 2 years ago, like on kind of in April, I re-downloaded Instagram. This part of the story. Re-downloaded Instagram for the first time in 4 years, and in the background of the first reel that I saw that had like 7 million views was a friend of mine called Dan. And at the time, I was trying to find a co-working space in Bristol to put on an event, a B Corp space. And I reconnected with Dan, and he said, "Oh yeah, last time I'd spoken to him, he'd been in London." And I was like, "What are you doing now?" He's like, "I'm working at a B Corp co-working space in Bristol." And I was like, "That's a bit weird." So I reconnected with Dan, and we'd met just after I'd been to India the first time, travelling, and he turned out to be from Kendal, and had heard of Kendal Calling, and he was a traveller and liked these long distance journeys. That's what we connected on, him learning about my trip to Bhutan. But when I reconnected with him in Bristol 2 years ago, he'd really got into ultra running. And on the walk to an Earth Day dinner I'd been invited to, that I took Dan along to, which is the 24th of April, we were walking to this dinner, the first time we'd seen each other in a few years, and he said, "Are you still obsessed with that hedge in India?" And I honestly had not thought about it for years, because life had got in the way. COVID happened, started a business. The idea of taking a huge amount of time off for anything was just completely off the table. I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "You should go back and do that. You should go back and do it." And I was thinking of all the reasons I couldn't do it. And then he just jokingly said, "You should run it." And then we went into this Earth Day dinner, and I was sat down then next to a woman called Nina Davies, who runs the Green Runners, which is a community of runners that care about the planet, and had just so happened to qualify as a running coach that day. And I knew I was in trouble when that happened.
And at that point, you're not a runner at all. Like,
I was unfit. I mean, I'd come on some fresh walks, and that was about it. I'd always be knackered after a fresh walks as well. But I didn't go to the gym, didn't do any exercise at all. I was unfit. I was just about to turn 40. I'd run a bit, I'd done like a half marathon before when my dad passed away with my sisters, but hadn't trained for that. I just was not athletic person at all. And when I'd done the Bhutan trip, actually, for context, I've got scoliosis, got double curve in my spine. I was wearing a permanent back brace at that point in my life, which I was wearing for 23 hours a day. So I'd kind of come back from that original India trip, quite unfit. And then I'd kind of got myself to the stage by the time we met each other and Lee and everybody, when I was able to go on some hikes. And that was my level of fitness, to be honest.
and so you decide, I know what I'm going to do. Is that 4,000 kilometers? We're going to do 100 marathons in 100 days.
Well, no, I didn't. Right, let's get this right. I did not decide any of this, right? Dan turns up, tells me to do it. Then I sit next to a qualified running coach who represents runners that care about people and the planet, which is what I care about. It's what my business, now, at this point, has suddenly become my full-time career. I've been campaigning for something called the Better Business Act for the last 3 years, which is directly against the East India Company's law about shareholder value for stakeholder value. So all these things work-wise are kind of convening. Then at this Earth Day dinner, and we're in Bristol, it's Bristol Running Show that weekend. Nina says, "Can you help on the Green Runners stall?" I said, "Yeah, fine." And she picks us up on the Sunday, and we get in the car, and Dan said, "Hannah's going to run this hedge." Nina was like, are you actually going to do it? She doesn't know me at all. She doesn't know how unfit I am. And I'd done a 5K with Dan the day before and nearly died. And I was like, I'll be honest, if I meet someone, I need some more signs in the universe. I don't need to just have met an ultra runner that's telling me to do it, the running coach that I need, and a community of runners that will support me. That's not enough. And I said, if I meet an older person, which I am now, or an older woman who's could do it, and also if I meet someone that's maybe run across India, because I wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to that. By this point, I'd been obsessed with this hedge. I say obsessed, I'd been interested, but I hadn't really thought about it for years, but for about 10 years. And I'm at the Green Runners stand, feeling like an absolute imposter, because I'd only done 5K the day before I nearly died. And, this guy called Will comes in, a friend of Dan's, says hello, really fit young guy in his early 20s. And Dan says, "Oh, this is my mate Hannah, she's running across India." And Will, bless him, kept a very straight face. But if he looked at, everyone's in running gear at the running show. I'm there in a corduroy jacket, just as a 40-year-old graphic designer. And I'm just and then no judgment. And he said, "I'm just about to run across India." And I thought, oh, shit. I was like, "But you're a 20-year-old guy, so that's fine." And then this woman walked over, a woman called Nikki Love. She was wearing a bright yellow hoodie with a map of Australia on it, with someone running across it. And my first words to her were, "Bet you fucking run across Australia." And she was like, rude. And she was like, "Yeah, I have." And I was like, "Oh no." And I was like, "Well, what made you want to run across Australia?" And at this point, just for context, my only kind of touch points were, I'd been obsessed with this hedge for 10 years. And last time I'd organised something epic, which was the UK to Bhutan trip, it had taken me 18 months, from the concept of the idea to spending 7 days a week on it, saving enough money, leaving. It was 18 months. And she said to me, "Why'd you ask?" And I just jokingly went, "Well, I've been obsessed with this hedge for 10 years. And in 18 months, I'm going to run across it." And she went, "No way." She called her partner over and she said, tell Hannah why I ran across Australia. He went, "Well, yeah, she was obsessed with the idea for 10 years. And then in 18 months, she just decided to do it." And I was like, excellent. And I remember, some of you in here will know James, who I used to work with. He's at the cooperative now. But I remember coming back into the office on the Monday morning, bearing in mind we work from home on Fridays, and I'd just taken a Thursday off to go to Bristol. So he'd only seen me the Wednesday before as normalish Hannah. And then I'd come into the office on Monday and it was like, "How was everyone's weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "So I'm running across India in 18 months. And everyone was like, never talked about the hedge to them, never, obviously wasn't a runner. Everyone in the office was just like, "What is going on?" But then, yeah, just from that moment, I was like, I'm going to have to figure out a way to do this.
Amazing. Well, let's fast forward. What was it like? Do you remember the first day of the first marathon?
Yeah. Ran past a dead cow in like 6K. It was quite funny because then Natalie had the drone out. She's like, "I've got a great picture of you going past with the cow." We were like, "It was dead. Its tongue was out, Natalie." Spoiler alert, I did it. So the first 5 months of Project Salt Run, I was like, right, I need to figure out I can run. So for 5 months, I dedicated myself to training to be a runner, and I did my first ultra in the kind of September, October of 2024. And then I was like, right,
all of this as well, just to add some flavour to it, is you have also moved into a canal barge
I just
that
bought
needs
a boat.
fully doing.
Oh yeah,
right.
That's a nightmare too. Yeah, so I just bought a boat as well that completely needed renovating. So I'm kind of mid renovation of a canal boat as well. So yeah, 5 months in, I do my first ultra. Then I publicly start saying to people, Project Salt Run is a thing. Can you give me some money to make this happen? Because I obviously didn't have enough money to do a world first expedition. So we started fundraising for Project Salt Run. Joelle and I started a podcast where every week we were interviewing people and just talking about how we operationally, financially, and kind of physically pulling this challenge together. We managed to fundraise enough money from people to pull a tiny little crew together. And we basically had, when we flew out to India, I had raised enough money that had paid Joelle and Dan for a few months to project manage and pull together and really map out the logistics of the route. But we had in the bank probably enough money for about 2 weeks. We had raised enough money for the flights, but I'd had to spend it on something else. So those were on my credit card. And the business, which I thought would be like ready to be sustainable and manage itself while I was away at least, was not. But we were already ready to go. So we just kind of just went on a wing and a prayer. And so we totally weren't ready for it at all. So that first marathon, I hadn't even had a chance to really think about it till I was there. If I'd just been concentrating on the fact I was about to run across a country, I probably would have been really stressed about it. But like I was more stressed about like, how are we going to pay for the next 2 weeks? So the first one was amazing, but there was just so much going on the rest of the time as well. So, but it was my fastest ever marathon, probably because it was only like my 5th. So, yeah.
And so just talk us through like the highs and lows.
So, yeah, we flew into Delhi. Alex didn't have his visa in time, so then we had to wait for Alex for a couple of days. So we started a day later than planned. We started on the 26th of October. Started at the Pakistan border. Because we'd had some visa issues, we weren't able to do the Pakistan part of the inland customs line. That's part 2. So we started at the Pakistan border. We basically ran, the plan was to run 100 marathons in 100 days across India. Went out there, it was me, Joelle, Alex and Natalie. Joelle we could only afford for the first 50 days. And he had another trip planned anyway. And then we had a driver and a helper, Asghar Raja, who we were very lucky, were incredible. We were really a really good family team. And yeah, the routine was wake up, eat breakfast, run 15 kilometres, eat a meal, run 15 kilometres, eat another meal, run 12 kilometres, eat another meal, go to bed. And we were all staying in one van called Moxie. That was a 4-berth. So Asghar slept in the booth at the front and Raja slept in a tent outside usually. We would pull over on the side of the road and sleep in petrol station forecourts. So we'd turn up at a petrol station, ask them if we could sleep there. We'd join all the stray dogs and the loud lorries there every night, and we'd set up our camping chairs, have a nice meal outside. I'd have a cold shower at the end of every day because we didn't have any hot water. We had a tiny little fridge which just kept chocolate bars and soda. It didn't kind of fit anything else. Cooked mostly on the road. It was very basic facilities the whole time. Yeah.
And how long? I can't really imagine doing a marathon. I did a half marathon once by accident, just because I got to like, I don't know, something silly like 15k and thought if I don't do it now, I probably never ever will, and I never have since. But the idea of doing a marathon to me is just impressive anyway. The idea of then getting them the next day and doing another one, and then doing that again for 98 next days is beyond my comprehension. So what goes on in your body? Like, did it start breaking down? Did it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was awful. How soon? What, when?
Well, I mean...
And mentally it must be...
Yeah, I mean, the most important part of the story I can tell you is went from that Earth Day dinner, I went back to Manchester. I wasn't telling people I'm planning to, I'm working out. I was like, I'm running 100 days, 100 marathons in 100 days across India. That's what I was telling people all the time. If you know me, that's what I was, and everyone was going to me, what? Are you mental? I'd be like, obviously I'm mental, but listen to what I'm saying. I'm running 100 marathons in 100 days. And I've been telling myself for 18 months every single day that that's what I was going to do. And I was also surrounding myself with other crazy people, because that's how you do it, isn't it? It's like you surround yourselves with the people that are going to bring you up. So I met lots of ultra runners, because it turns out there aren't many people that have done massive things like this, so they're always open to chatting. And all of them had said to me, first 2-3 weeks are awful, but then your body will just it will just get used to it. So in my head I was always like, I've just got to get through the first couple of weeks and then I'll be fine. And also I had so many other things to worry about. I didn't really even see myself as much as an athlete, because when you look at athletes, they're just turning up and they're barely having to think about anything. Someone's passing them their food, their drinks, whereas we're there, really just don't know what we're doing at all. Like, don't know what a protein shake is, don't know what a supplement is, or an electrolyte. We're really just people are we would talk to people and they're like, what, you don't have, what's your nutrition plan? And we're like, whatever they're selling on the side of the road, I don't know. I kind of didn't view myself as an athlete. I was just like someone trying to make a thing happen. The first 2 weeks were awful. And I actually saw Sam Jones the other day. He went, I really didn't think you were going to make it watching you that first 2 weeks. And I was like, join the club. But it was so bad. But I was thinking, I can't give up this early on because it's so early in the challenge. Collapsed from heat exhaustion on day 11, which was pretty scary. And then I consistently through the trip had quite bad stomach issues. But injury wise, I was kind of fine, apart from obviously everything really hurting all the time. But I didn't have any major injuries on the run. Luckily didn't in the lead up either. Didn't have any injuries. The only real injury issues I had was right at the end, day 98. I got quite bad shin splints, which we thought might be a stress fracture, but turned out it wasn't. But yeah, the gut issues were probably the worst part of the run.
And pretty much halfway through, you were really ill, weren't you?
Yeah, I was really sick. So there were some specific points I remember being really ill. I remember there was a few days where we were fundraising £1 million for charity. So we had 4 charities, 1% for the Planet, which is a charity that encourages all businesses to give 1% of their revenue to high impact non-profits. And then we had 3 of those non-profits, which was Frank Water, a water education charity, Client Earth, a law firm that advocates for the planet, and Big Change, which is an education charity that advocates for young people doing social impact. Now that story is wild, how Big Change came in, because we wanted an education charity as part of the kind of story, because we wanted to be environmental impact is not just nature, it's education, water, and I was at Better Business Act Day in London that year, and randomly Jamie at work started talking to Holly Branson, told you about Project Salt Run. And she said, well, I'm actually trustee of an education charity. Another trustee of that education charity was a guy that runs the building that I live in. So I was like, oh, this is a bit of a sign. And when I'd had the first meeting with them, they were like, oh, we're doing a cycling challenge in India the same time you're there. Maybe we can kind of meet up. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I was like, but India's big. And he went, well, look, we're going to be at the Taj Mahal on 17th of October, I think it was. And I was like, oh, no, 17th of November. And I was like, we're going to be in the Taj Mahal on the 17th of November. Though you can't even make that up, can you? And I was like, well, obviously you're going to be our charity, and obviously we'll meet at the Taj. So it was like, see you then. So then we we're running, and I'd had this heat exhaustion, being quite ill. We're about 3 weeks in. At this point, we're like literally I'm running on fumes, but like the project's running on fumes. We've got like no money left at all. And I'm really starting to get quite sick, really tired, and we've had to kind of change the schedule so that I'm running in the worst of the heat, because we're trying to get to the Radisson to meet all these cycle charity people the day before, and then we're going to the sunrise Taj Mahal with them all, and then I'm having to run the marathon after. That was the plan. And I went into it really, really tired, and I was so tired the day before. Mark Bratt Travel, who had given us like a free stay in a really lovely hotel in Agra, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to get to the hotel, have a really good night's sleep, and then I'll be ready for the next few days, because I'm on death's door. And then I come downstairs and Alistair's there with his wife, and I'm like, great to see you. And which was great to see him. No, but it was exactly what I needed at that time. It was amazing. Had a surprise of a friend come out. I'm in this like lovely hotel. We had an amazing meal together, didn't we? We had such a lovely night. But I was exhausted, because then I'm up at 4 o'clock the next morning to go for this next marathon. And I get up, do the next marathon, and I'm really on the brink at this point. And it's the thing about the run that was the tiredness. I was on about 4 hours sleep a night. And you just can't, your body is not recovering when you're sleeping that little. And it's because it's just so noisy in India. It's just impossible. And we're staying in a van with 3 other people. You know, it's just, if anyone moves, you're awake. So I'm really ill. I don't know what the question was. I just like telling this story.
Well, just finish telling the
story. So I'm really ill. We turn up at the Radisson. Freddie's like, I've put you up in the Radisson for the night. So we're like, what, 2 hotels in a row? Like, this is amazing. We turn up and we're expecting to meet, like, we're a ragtag bunch. Do you know what I mean? Joel, I met, for context, because he's got a great documentary out on Amazon Prime called Global Convoy, where he'd bought like a £70 car and travelled the world in it, and they filmed it all on iPhones and made a documentary of it. And we met at a film festival, and then I basically got him to come to India. And then Alex and Natalie, who are a couple who are friends of mine, but they'd obviously never done anything like this before either. We're all making it up as we go along. We're thinking we're going to meet a bunch of normal people who are doing a really extraordinary big challenge, who, you know, people who like have to raise £4,000 to do the London Marathon or Kilimanjaro stuff. We, you know, expecting to see like people from all walks of life at the Taj Mahal doing this charity challenge for a big change. No, we get up to the rooftop of Radisson, and the first person I get introduced to is Richard Branson, and I'm like, oh my god. And so we're having a chat, and then I get introduced to Alan, who's the founder of Grenade Bars. And then I get introduced to someone else, and then I suddenly realise I'm in a room full of millionaires and billionaires, and I need to get my shit together. And we've got no money, so I'm like, I need to like impress these guys, because maybe we'll get some more. We need to get some money for the expedition. So we all sit in this circle, and everyone's like, I'm out here to do this, that, and the other, and the rest of the team are starting to realise we're surrounded by millionaires and billionaires, and everyone's getting really nervous, because we're like, oh, it's going to get round to us. And it gets round to Richard Branson. He's like, well, you all know who I am, but let me tell you about Hannah. And he pulls out his chair, sticks it in the middle of this circle of people, puts me in it, and then sits in my chair. I've never seen Natalie look more scared in her life. She's like this. And makes me tell the story of Project Salt Run. So I tell the story. Wasn't a run, I'm on day 20, whatever. We're trying to raise £1 million for charity. We don't know what we're doing. I'm not feeling very well, etc. And we have this dinner together, and then we all get invited, obviously, to Sarah Blakely's hotel, the first self-made billionaire of Spanx, to have a cocktail. So we go there, and I'm really not feeling good at this point. And we go there and I sniff my cocktail and I run to the girls' toilets and I projectile vomit all over the sink area. Not even in the toilet, not even in a sink, just the whole sink area. And I can't stop. And it's like out of a horror movie. And then I'm like, I'm not even at my hotel. And the only other person, Natalie and Alex, had stayed to schmooze with some other people, and I had to just pick all my sick up and put it in the sink. It was so gross. And then kind of go, I've got to go back out now. Went back out. I was like, I just need to get back to the hotel. Went back, spent the whole night being sick, and then had to get up the next day and walk around the Taj Mahal. And got up the next day and got down. And then Freddie was like, Richard wants to walk around with you. And I was like, fucking great. Excellent. Really happy about that. And then we ended up...
None of this came across on Instagram. You know?
No. No, this is a story you hear about afterwards, because we were at the time, there's so many awful things that happened on Project Salt Run, and if you watched it on Instagram, you wouldn't have known about any of it, because you have to remember there was 4 of us, and when things were really, really bad, we almost couldn't admit it to everybody else, because we were like, people aren't going to keep supporting us if they think we're not going to complete this challenge. So we didn't tell anyone that how ill I was, and I hadn't told the team I'd been puking all night. I told when I'd left the sinks of sick, I'd kind of gone out to Joanne and gone, I'm just actually quite tired. I'm just going to go to bed. I hadn't really told him, and so the next day the team were aware I was tired and not feeling good, but they weren't aware of how ill I was. We go around the Taj Mahal, and Ned, Richard Branson's nephew, who's like imagine a man, but he's a Labrador. And he's just like, they're not doing their cycle challenge for another day. They've got like a day off. And he's like, it would be so cool if some of us joined you today. And I was like, oh, no. I don't think that would be cool at all. I think that would actually be horrible if anyone joined me on today's marathon. So I'm trying to negotiate with Joelle on text, do not let this happen. And Joelle's like, we've got no money, suck it up. Like, you're going to have to... And I'm like, no, I'm really quite sick, Joelle. And he's like, well, I don't care. And I'm like, okay. So then we all go for breakfast. And then by the end of it, like 5 of them decide they want to come out on the marathon with us that day. And I thought I will go out on this breakfast and then I can at least sleep for a couple of hours and then try and do it. And then I had to do this marathon where about 5 kilometres in, I'm vomiting all over myself again. I've got like vomit, and I've got these like lovely 5 very successful men running with us for the whole day. And I don't think they were aware about how sick I was, but yeah, we had this like really random day, like 48 hours. And I think that's the most sick I've been. And then about a week later, day 49, a couple of weeks later, I was projectile vomiting everywhere again. Then 6 days after that, I got to the point where I was like so ill, I was like, I need to stop running, and I had a day off. But yeah.
And then you caught up, didn't you?
Then we caught up. But yeah, there was a lot of having to like suck it up because of opportunity, and that's where like the mental bit came in. Because Joelle was right, I couldn't not go out running with these guys, and actually, if it hadn't been for them running with us and kind of fundraising within their group and supporting us, gave us enough money for the actual trip to finish, because at that point we just wanted to focus on fundraising the money for the charities, and we didn't want to confuse the messaging to people, put it on the crowdfunder for this, for the Give Star, for that. So that opportunity gave us enough money to kind of get us to the finish line. But there was a lot of sick involved, basically.
At one point, have I got this right? Alex made you like modified your trainers with tires.
Yeah. So I only took 4 pairs of shoes out with me. One I'd been training in. I'd struggled to find a trainer that worked because we wanted to work with sustainable brands. So it was important we worked with the right trainer company. Found ones called Hilo, which are 1% for the planet and a B Corp. And I'd run with them for about 6 weeks before we went out. I'd run with a different brand for the coast to coast, and I'd lost 4 toenails and my feet were bloody and it was just disgusting. And I was like, my feet are like this after 1 week. I'm not going to survive in India. Managed to find this new trainer brand. I didn't know how many pairs to take. And people were like, you need to take like 15 pairs with you. And I was like, that's actually, what? I was like, that's mental. So I took 3 pairs and then like a spare pair, a size up for if my feet really swelled. And about 3,000 kilometres into the run, So we were with the trainers. We were like at 30 kilometers, I'd swapped to a fresh pair for the last 12K. But I was noticing that I was kind of really rubbing the edge of the bottom of the trainer down, and there was nowhere to buy trainers in India. And we'd actually had a package that we'd had sent out to us that was supposed to arrive in India when we were at the Taj Mahal, and got caught in customs, and we actually didn't get it till the day after we finished Project Salt One, and that had all our supplies in, so we couldn't get that. And it didn't have a spare pair of trainers in, but we thought if we can't get that in the country, there's no point trying to get some trainers in, because anyway. And I was running a lot on national highways, and there's these shacks on the side of the road where they're repairing the massive lorries' tyres. And I was just like, well, I'll just get, in my head, I was like, well, that makes sense. I'll just get a bit of tyre. But obviously I don't speak any Indian languages. So I kind of stopped on the side of the road and was just kind of saying, can I have a bit of this tyre? And they're looking at me like, what? And I'm like, I'm showing them my shoe, and they kind of got what I was saying, cut me out a bit. And then they were like, can we all have a selfie? And I was like, fine. So I'm doing like a little photo shoot. Everyone's having selfies. And I come back to the van with these bits of tyre. And I say to Alex, I think if we stick this on the bottom of my shoes, they'll last the end of the run. So basically he's a chiropodist. So he like had a scalpel and everything, stuck it on the bottom. We had some super glue with us and some sports tape, like the kinetic tape you put on your legs. And we kind of tied it all up for 2 days, one pair. And then that pair was like remade, ran on them, they were fine. So we repaired all of the shoes with tyres. So I ran on tyres for like the last 1,200 kilometres.
Isn't that mad? Hey, that's bonkers. You should release the shoe now.
I don't think anyone wants those shoes. I don't think anyone wants those shoes.
Well, we need to come into land, but what was your big, I mean, apart from just the achievement, which is staggering, what did it do for you?
I mean, if you speak, again, you'll meet other people who are long distance runners, and everyone I'd spoken to before had said, oh, it's in the mind, it's in the mind. And I'd be like, sorry, you're running a very long way, it's definitely in the legs. But they're right, it is in the mind. And I think my years of being a business owner definitely had me ready for Project Salt One, because as a business owner how difficult it is to manage the stress. Like, what, no one's sane is a business owner. I was having this conversation with Sam Jones the other day. No one's sane is making a decision to be this stressed about work as anyone who owns a business. But we do it because we really care about what we're trying to create and put out into the world. And I think that got me really more ready for Project Salt One than I'd actually realised at the time. But I guess there were two things for me. One was, from the moment that I said I was going to do it, I was saying I was going to do it. I wasn't trying to do it. I wasn't working out how to. I was going to do it. And speaking like that, because if I didn't believe that I was going to do it, then how was anyone else going to back the project? How was anyone else going to put their money, amplify it, talk about it on social media, if they didn't look at me and think, she's definitely going to do that? So it made me think we're not as limited in what we're able to achieve as we think we are. And none of it would have been possible without huge groups of people to help me. Obviously, Project Salt One, I'm here sitting talking about it, but it would not have been possible without hundreds of people who almost believed in it before it started, because there were hundreds of people that made that first day happen, whether that was through connecting me with people, putting some money in the pot for the crowdfunder so we could pay for stuff, talking about it on their socials so that other people might see. So I think if you're doing something that people like connect with the story, which is like our why was, I want to do everything I can to try and make the world a better place. Like, so many people just connected with that, with thinking like, I think we all just want to be told like how you can help. I think it can be a bit like, oh, there's so many ways in which we can help, but if you're like, this is how you can help this particular project, and if you care about it, this is what we need you to do to support us, then people were really supportive. So it again just solidified my thought that, just ask for help, because the worst people can do is say no. And I did that, and you can't be scared of rejection and failure when you are telling people that you're trying to do something that's never been done before, and you've got absolutely no experience and you're not physically ready for. You've got to have a bit of like, confidence, a bit of understanding. People might say no to that and be fine with it. but also the limit, your own personal limit is what you're putting on yourself. If you said to me 3 years ago, you're going to be sitting here talking about how you ran across India, and we've raised nearly like £98,000 with gift aid for our 4 charities, with this continued legacy to want to raise 1 million. I would just been like, there's absolutely no chance that I could have physically done that, or had the reach to be able to do something that big. And I think for all of us on Project Salt Run, we were just like, let's just show that ordinary people can do big things. So for me, it was like, it all made sense. Like by the time I met Dan and he was like, you should run it, and then there were all the reasons why I should run it, and I met the people and the universe sent me some woo-woo signs or whatever. It was like, if you're open to that, then the right things will kind of come in your lap, and it will land, and it will happen the way it needs to happen.
I love that. And how have you, we talked about the threads that led to you doing it, the purpose one you just articulated. Have you reflected on your dad and that side of it?
Yeah, so this actually is telling Lee about this. Actually, you never know what tiny thing you can do that can change the course of somebody's life. We all watch these time travel movies. Someone put this annoying idea. When you see something really good online and you forget to tag it, but someone had put something like, we watch movies where people go back in time, and they're like, Back to the Future, prime example of an incredible movie that does it. And you're like, the tiniest change can change the future. But we don't think that can happen right now, which is the tiniest change we make right now could massively change our future. Example of that happened last week that literally sent shivers down my spine. And there were so many parts of Project Salt Run that I could tell you that the universe was just bang, bang, bang all the time. You couldn't make it up. There's loads of it. But here's one that happened last week that literally blew my mind. And it's all about those tiny things that we could do that are kindness, that could just change the course of somebody's life. Mine was, I read a book 10 years ago, and even when I read it, I knew that was going to change my life, and I didn't know how, and then it has. Came back from India. As I said, I was sick, so I did 100 marathon distance in 100 days. So I ended up doing 75 marathons and 23 ultra marathons, which is 98 runs. So when I came back to the UK, London Marathon Events gave me a place on Brighton and London Marathon for my 99 and 100, which I wore my shitty old trainers in, and they were fine. And I did the 100th marathon in London last week, and I was on the front page of the BBC News sports site, which is mental. For me to be on a sports page is very funny, but I'm on there, and it was like, think the London Marathon was hard. Hannah did loads, and I was like, don't take away from the achievement. Anyway, it was there, and I got a message on Instagram from somebody saying, "Are you Hannah Cox that went to St Mary's Primary School in Royston?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we moved there, and I don't know the exact. I'll have to check with my mum. I think about 2 or maybe 3 months after we moved, my mum and dad split up. It was obviously a bit of a move to try and keep the family together. It didn't work. They split up. It was year 4 at school, and I remember they'd split up before like October half term. But my dad had been there for just a few weeks, and he was a chess champion. He'd gone into the school a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4 times, and teach some chess to some of the kids. And someone messaged me on Instagram the other day, and they were like, "Are you Hannah Cox?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Your dad changed my life. He gave me a lifelong passion for chess. I'm now the international women's coach for the UK. Wow. And I do schools programs that teaches young girls in school that they should play chess." And he was like, and I just wanted to say, like, he was an incredible man. If I hadn't met him, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And I would not have known that my dad had changed that person's and hundreds, thousands of people's lives if that article just hadn't been in the ether for Lauren to find. And that just shows how tiny acts of kindness you just don't even know where they're going to go. And that to me was just like, that was what the whole story was about.
Wow. It feels like a beautiful place to land. I just want to ask one more thing. What's next?
Well, we still haven't been to Pakistan. So really keen to get that part of the trip finished. And we filmed a lot of it. So there's going to be a documentary. And then I think in regards to what's next, we've got £1 million to raise. I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm going to wait for the universe to push me in the right way for the right one.
and alongside that, the Better Business Network
Yeah,
continues to grow.
growing the network, 10,000 members, lobbying government, and continuing to try and make the world a nicer place.
Amazing. It's a drop in the ocean, but your ticket today will obviously go in the pot.
Thank you.
However else you feel like you can contribute to that, I think you've heard the story now, you've heard the why, you've heard the impact, and you've heard how that little seed of kindness can do something. So, I don't often ask, but if you find even just the ability to share Hannah's story and Project Salt Run, then please do. But let's thank Hannah for sharing today.